It's time for Security Now. Steve Gibson's here. We've got questions from our audience, but before we get to those, I can't believe it. There's another flaw in Java. Details next on Security Now.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Audio bandwidth for Security Now is provided by the new Winamp for Android, featuring wireless sync and one-click iTunes import. Now with free daily music downloads and full-length CD listening parties. Download it for free at winamp.com/Android. Video bandwidth for Security Now is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. It's time for Security Now with Steve Gibson, episode 393, recorded February 27th, 2013. Your questions, Steve's answers, number 162. Security Now is brought to you by Manpacks, manly goods on a schedule. Get started today and have underwear, socks, toiletries, shaving supplies, and more delivered to your door. Visit manpacks.com/twit and get $10 off your first order of $30 or more. Or buy a $50 gift card for $40. manpacks.com/twit. It's time for Security Now, the show that covers your security and privacy and everything else you need to know to stay safe online with this man right here. We call him the Explainer-in-Chief, Mr. Steve Gibson of grc.com. Hello, Steve Areno.
Hey, Leo. Great to be with you. Episode 162. I'm sorry, 393.
Question and
Q&A
answer to
number.
162.
Yeah, Q&A 162. We've got so much to talk about sort of toward the top of the show that I'm not sure how many questions we'll get to. We've got 10 plus a bonus question this week. Some interesting, fun things to talk about. So we'll just do, 90 minutes worth of stuff, starting with news and updates and so forth, and play it by ear.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. We have some visitors in the studio. Lyle's from Nashville, James from Bloomington, Indiana. I warned them. I said, "Are you ready to get geeky?" They put on their little pointy hats. They're ready to go. Actually, James is an IT guy at Indiana. Is it Indiana University? Yeah. And Lyle's with Cisco. No, not with Cisco. Works with Cisco. Did you see the small town that has a $30,000 Cisco router? Did you see that story? Just ridiculous.
Oh. So total overkill for what the town needed?
There's 400 people in the town. They have a shack for a library with one internet connection, and it has a massive Cisco switch in there. And the reason is they went to Cisco, the state. I've got to find this story. The state went to Cisco, and Cisco said, "Yeah, you need all this stuff." They just threw it at them. It's a really kind of an amazing story. I'll see if I can find it while we're talking. I just read it this morning, and I should have bookmarked it. Fool that I am. But you've got plenty to talk about. So
well, you have an amazing story, and for the top of a podcast, we have an unbelievable story, only because it is too believable.
Uh-oh. By the way, it's West Virginia. It's a small town in West Virginia. Here, I just found it. It's in Ars Technica. One-room West Virginia library has a Cisco 3945 router. It's a $20,000 router. It's in a temporary building. It turns out, in fact, the state's legislative auditor found this. It's a town. The small town of Clay, West Virginia, has seven 3945 routers serving 491 people. $100,000 worth of Cisco routers within 0.44 miles of each other. This is the best routed city in America.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I guess it was Cisco's sales guys that convinced the state to buy $24 million worth of 3945 branch routers. Unbelievable. Wow. You couldn't even saturate one of them.
No. No.
So, your story now. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Believe it or not, Leo, we have 2 new Java vulnerabilities.
What? No, that's not possible. We fixed Java just the other day.
Yes, we did. And the day after, 2 new ones were found. A pair of newly detected flaws in Java can be exploited to allow attackers to bypass the browser plugin's sandbox security feature. So it gets out of the Java sandbox, which of course is now the goal of any exploit. It affects the most recent Java update, which is Java 7 Update 15, which was released on February 19th. So here we are 9 days later on the 27th. And actually, this news is a couple days old. So, and Java 6 is not affected. So,
so something they introduced.
This is, well, yeah, exactly. This is something, and we've seen this already in Java 7, things that were not a problem in 6, new features they put in that are causing problems. So in several of the reports of this, I've seen it written that experts are advising users to disable or even uninstall Java. And there are also reports that an exploit for Java 7 Update 11 has been detected in the wild. And Update 13 was released to fix that one on February 1st. So it's really getting ridiculous. And one of my favorite sources of security news is, the SANS security newsletter that I subscribe to. And it's just a really great summary that comes out a couple times a week of stuff. One of their editors, John Pescator, who is a VP of Gartner for 14 years, he had a little editorializing after their news summary. He said, in developing the Morse code, Samuel Morse assigned the shortest code element, dit, to the most common letter, E, in the English language. Java vulnerabilities today, much like IIS, and that was Microsoft's web server back in the day, much like IIS and Internet Explorer vulnerabilities 10 years ago, have now earned DIT status. I was tempted to say, or maybe duh. It's just amazing. I mean, it is getting to be ridiculous. In fact, we've got one of our listeners shares with us his company's solution to this problem, how they've worked, because they have a need for Java, as corporations do. Invariably when I tweet something about this, people say, oh, well, the best way to fix it is uninstall. It's like, yes, but some people can't.
If you play Minecraft, there's lots of reasons you need it.
Yeah, there are actually. And in fact, the code that I'm, the Eclipse platform, which is the development platform for, is Java-based. So, you got to have it around. You don't always have to have it in your browser. Although, and we've heard reports from like lots of Scandinavian banks require Java plugins in the browser. So that's the problem. And I mean, it is really getting pathetic and ridiculous. We do have a bright spot, however. Firefox version 22. I think I'm on 18 or 19. What am I on now? I updated not long ago. I'm on 19.0. Oh, and that's the one that's got the integrated, we talked about it last week, the integral PDF reader.
Right.
Even though I had a PDF plugin, I was using Sumatra PDF and happy with it, although it kind of gets a little wonky sometimes. When I installed the latest version of Firefox last week, it sort of pushed the plugin PDF reader aside and took over with its own. So, again, it's always good to be cautious of something new from a security standpoint, because this is a lot of new code, but there's no way that anybody today could develop something which didn't have, develop something for the browser like the Mozilla guys that didn't have security as its number one feature. I mean, I'm loving the fact that we're seeing the kind of inevitable escalation of awareness, because that's the driving force behind these things being fixed in the long term. So that's all good. Anyway, my point is that with Firefox 22, which will be 3 versions from now, slated for a June 25th release. I don't know how they know that, but June 25th.
Because I'm on 18 right now. I mean, I'm way behind that, and that's just
on
updated.
Safari.
Oh, Safari.
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
Firefox 19.
Firefox.
I'm Firefox 19, and it says it's
On
up
Mac.
to date on the Mac. Yeah.
Yes. So they are once again going to try to disable third-party cookies by default.
Good.
Yes. So they will join the singular rank. I don't know if you can have a rank if there's only one.
It's one of yes.
But they will form a rank with Safari. The only two browsers then that have third-party cookies turned off by default. And I coined the term the tyranny of the default, because it is so much the case that default settings are what everyone runs on. I mean, obviously not everyone, but the vast majority of people just assume that smarter people than they figured out how things should be set, and they don't want to mess with them because they don't understand them. And I've been tracking third-party cookie usage of GRC's visitors for years now, and I have at grc.com/cookies/stats.htm, you can see a really graphic, well, because it's a chart, but a very clear display of the effect of Safari's decision on third-party cookie usage. Because among all the browsers that I profile, one stands out as just ridiculously low level of third-party cookie usage because it's off unless people turn it on. So, and this was Jonathan Mayer from Stanford. He's been mentioned in the podcast for years. He's a graduate student in computer science and law at Stanford, focusing on public policy, law, and the internet, and privacy. And he's got some interesting papers written about the do not track header and why it represents, when it's eventually implemented, the best of all worlds. Because
third-party cookies and do not track the same thing?
No. Third-party cookies are...
Because I don't see a setting in Firefox for third-party cookies at all anymore.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely there. And in fact,
I see tell websites I don't want to be tracked.
No, and that's good. That's do not track. I think it's under the privacy tab.
No, it's not.
Oh.
That's what I thought. I looked under privacy and security. I wonder if they've taken that out now.
Privacy.
Maybe they just turn it on. When they say turn it on by default, maybe they mean it's on. It's on.
Okay, so on my privacy tab, I've got, maybe it's because I've got Firefox will use custom settings for history, and I think that maybe opened up a bunch of things because I'm sitting here.
Use custom settings. Now I see it. So so the default, which is remember history, doesn't have anything. But if you go to use custom settings for history, then accept third-party cookies has a checkbox, and you can uncheck that.
Yep.
That's different from do not track, which was the issue with Internet Explorer.
Right, and it's funny because I was looking at browser headers yesterday with Chrome, and they're just like there was DNT:1, just Chrome sending out its little beacon of this user has requested not to be tracked, and it's like that's nice. Yeah. So yes, the do not track is a statement from the browser saying that my user has asked not to be tracked. That's all it means. So it's controversial.
It's not even enforced.
It's
just a request.
Honoring the request is up to the people who receive it. Third-party
very famously, Apache does not honor the request, right?
Apache actually goes further. Apache, and this is something I think is so wrong, the server itself strips that header preemptively so that applications on Apache can't even see if it was sent. And I think that is really overstepping the bounds. This will end up getting reversed because it is absolutely wrong. But
I do wish Firefox would make it easier to turn off Java, to disable the Java. I mean, come on. Okay, that's good.
Although I think if you look, where was it I saw it? I think if you look in plugins.
Yes, that's what. Both Chrome, both Chrome
add-ons.
Tools add-ons.
And then if you look on, if you do
there it is.
plugins, then it shows it in red. It says known to be vulnerable. Acrobat, I've got a couple old Acrobats in here, 831-930, known to be vulnerable, disabled. So, I mean, it really does, it's doing a good job. And we're going to talk in a minute here about something that Google did for the NBC.com site when it got hacked last Thursday that was really nice for people, too. So anyway, Firefox version 22 makes a very nice step forward. Thanks to Jonathan Mayer at Stanford. I want to tip of the hat to him and the Mozilla guys for saying, yeah, we're ready to do this now. They did at one point, it was like version, 4 maybe, when it was in beta, they had it turned on, but they backed out at the last minute before it went public and said, okay, no, we'll just leave it the way it is. But we're seeing a groundswell about privacy, and I'm seeing some things from the people who really track this about how privacy and security are beginning to overlap. That is, people may say, oh, well, privacy, that would be nice to have, but no one has it. The problem is attacks are becoming more targeted, and the more information the targeter has about the targetee, the greater the chance that the attack is going to be successful. So it really does make sense to keep your privacy guards up where you can. So anyway, that's nice news for Firefox. I know that, I guess the people who are in the know today are probably either using Firefox or Chrome. Certainly no one's using IE, although it's too bad because Microsoft is really,
hey, you know what? I've been using Windows 8 on a high-res tablet, and Chrome looks like crap. So I'm using Internet Explorer. Chrome is my default, but it does not look good on this 1920 by 1080 display, and it doesn't support touch. So I can't, with the Internet Explorer, I can scroll with my fingers, I can zoom and pinch, and Chrome not yet. I'm sure it will. Maybe.
Well, and the fact is, IE10 today. We're still.
It's good.
Yes, Microsoft has they focused on security. It took them forever to get off the launch pad and into orbit, as always is the case with them or any really huge organization, but they have. And so it's really not fair to, accuse them of still having IE6.
Right.
They don't have IE6 anymore. They have IE10 and it's way better. So in fact,
I ended up using IE10 on Windows 8 just because it was better.
And speaking of which, IE10 just came out of beta. I upgraded to that on a Windows 7 machine of mine yesterday. 7 comes with 9, and I updated to 10 because I wanted to start watching it and see how it feels. It looks absolutely the same. So it's just, it's better.
I guess I can scroll with 2 fingers. It's just weird. Explorer just looks better. It just handles it better. So if you're using Windows 8, I think there are probably a lot of people who have gone back to Explorer.
So what I was going to say was that on the desktop platforms, we're probably split between Firefox and Chrome, either of which are, really good choices, I think. What did not get any news coverage, I was really surprised. No one seemed to pick it up and tweet it to me. So my major pulse on the industry didn't see this, is that Microsoft was also hacked along with Facebook and Apple.
Yeah, they didn't mention it until everybody else did.
Exactly. And so in their blog Friday, they said under the title of recent cyber attacks, they said, as reported by Facebook and Apple, Microsoft can confirm that we also recently experienced a similar security intrusion. Consistent with our security response practices, we chose not to make a statement during the initial information gathering process. During our investigation, we found a small number of computers, including some in our Mac business unit. In other words, it was the same iOS watering hole attack that got the Facebook and Apple developers, that were infected by malicious software using techniques similar to those documented by other organizations. We have no evidence of customer data being affected, and our investigation is ongoing. Well, good luck with your investigation. So
Such a cynic.
I've been watching them for too long. Although I do, as I said last week, I've been very impressed with Server 2008 R2, and I am using a new Win 7 installation with IIS 7.5 here at home. So I have the same thing that I have at the data center, and they got their act together finally.
Good.
Apparently, you know someone named Bob Boson.
Okay.
Who once talked about his AskMrWizard.com website.
Sounds right.
He had some interaction with you. Well, Bob asked me if it would be all right with me if for some selected propeller head episodes, which sort of cry out for graphics, if he were to do some animated graphics to go along with my voiceover.
Oh.
And I said, of course.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that idea.
So you can go to askmrwizard.com, and over on the left, you will see a link to Security Now, or you can go askmrwizard.com/security now, which takes you directly there. And what I saw yesterday, and I don't know how he's organizing it, because I just saw his note when I was going through the queue.
Security Now Illustrated. I like it.
Yeah. And he handles NAT traversal. He talks about NAT routing and how NAT routing are good firewalls. I mean, basically, he's using the podcast audio, but doing 3D animated video.
Wow.
With like comments and balloons that illustrate things. He understands it, and so he's helping other people to do so. So what I'm gonna do is I want to tell everybody about it. I asked him, can we tell everybody? He says, oh yeah, sure. So this stuff's up on YouTube, and what I will hope is that as he finishes new ones, he'll let me know, and I'll just make a brief note during the show that there's another one for people to check out if they want. But they're nice. I mean, it's done at home, but it's nice 3D graphics, animated
That's really
stuff.
Cool. That's so neat. And I do agree. I've always wished we had the budget to have more illustrations in all of our shows.
Yeah, and especially for this, when we're doing the fancy stuff, when I'm talking about encryption and all that, it'd be wonderful. But oh my God, that's that would take over my life for the week. Getting that stuff done.
Oh, yeah, you can't.
I'm a perfectionist, and I would never be happy with it. Okay, now Leo, this is beyond cool. You need to click the link in that next item.
Okay, don't say it out loud until I do.
I won't,
because we'll probably bring it down.
This is something that someone following me over in my VLC Twitter feed tweeted, and it is so cool. It's called the UCheck urine analysis. But it is brilliant. They use a smartphone like an iPhone to you take a picture of urine test strips. Over time. So you take several different pictures of it as the test strip is evolving, and then this thing interprets the results for you much better than you could just by hand, and of course builds in a calendar and all that. So and it measures ketones, all kinds of measures which are detectable from a urinalysis.
Because I this is non-trivial. I look at these things and I don't. Is that purple? Is it green? I don't know.
Yeah. And now, okay. And the thing that I got the biggest kick out of was that the developers who said, well, this is going to be an Apple application, so we're tempted to call it IP.
IP. There will be an Android version too, though. So IP.
Anyway,
I like it.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Not out yet, by the way. Don't. But UCHEK.in if you want to check for it.
Ah, good.
Yeah.
Yes. Looks neat.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is again we're doing miscellanea here, but this is the most exciting piece of news I've seen in years. It is the cover of next week's Time magazine, It's been on the time.com site for about a week. It is a long story. I tweeted the link to it. I also created a bit.ly shortcut, bit.ly/bitter, bitter hyphen pill, pill. Bitter Pill is the title of this Time magazine. It is a major investigative report, the longest one Time magazine has ever undertaken. 7.5 months they worked on this. And what's exciting to me, the whole title is Bitter Pill, Why Medical Bills Are Killing Us. And this has been my own personal crusade. I mean, my friends are all annoyed with me because I'm ranting because, here we are with but the Republicans and the Democrats locked up. We've got the sequester coming into effect on Friday, and everyone's, yelling and pointing fingers at each other. They're worried about, entitlement reform, and the entitlements are going to the soaring cost of medicine. And I have been asking, okay, the driver of all of this is that it costs so much.
Yeah.
Is it cost so much?
Yeah.
Why does, okay, yes, open heart surgery is amazing.
Yeah, but a Band-Aid shouldn't cost $25.
Exactly. And I have an elderly friend who lives in my neighborhood who's had a couple rather routine surgeries, but because he's 75, they kept him at our local Newport Beach hospital.
You don't ever want that.
It was like $7,800 a night, $7,800 a day. And just mind-boggling. And it's like, okay, why? And what I'm excited about, and the reason I'm bothering our security-oriented listeners about this is I don't think there's anything more important. I have no problem with Mercedes and BMWs costing whatever they want, because I can choose if I want to drive a VW or a BMW.
It's discretionary.
Yes, but health isn't. And this article, which is fascinating, I'm mentioning it because I would encourage everyone to make some time to read it. It'll be out on the newsstands this weekend. It's next week's Time magazine cover story. You can get it now online at time.com. And it is fascinating. This reporter doesn't just wave his arms around and talk about how expensive everything is. He goes through individual people's case histories, talks about dissects their 327-page medical bill, and demonstrates how wrong it is that a hospital in Texas that is nonprofit and therefore tax exempt is making $1 billion, lobbying Congress. The medical industry lobbies Congress 5 times more than the defense industry does. It's amazing. And so anyway, I just wanted to point people to it. Enough said, but that's the problem that we have is it's the expense at the far end that is, pushing everything back. So I just thought it was really interesting, and I was so glad to see it because we have to have this has to be brought to light, and nothing will do it better than a cover story in Time magazine. All the different news stories. Jon Stewart had the guy on late last week. All of the morning shows have been talking about it. So I'm just glad it's getting some attention. It's really important. Also, one of my very favorite sci-fi authors is now on Audible, Michael McCullum of sci-fi.com. So I wanted to let people know. I got the heads up from a couple of our listeners who said, hey, Michael's books just appeared. And I'm by just, we're talking like the 19th, so just last week. I pinged him and said, hey, what's the story? Because there are 5 of his books are there now. The first 2 of the Antares trilogy, the first one of the Gibraltar trilogy, and both of the Makers series. But they're all going to be there. He told me that Audible had purchased the rights to all of them. He was removing his own Audible experiment where I think he had an automated text reader that was like reading them, which is like way less, wonderful than an actual person reading them. But they're out there now. They're on Audible, and so I just wanted to give our listeners a heads up. The Antares Dawn series is just great, as is Gibraltar Earth. I've really, really enjoyed them.
I'm so glad they're on Audible. Did he make it? He must have made a deal because he's his own publisher, right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, that's cool.
The rights. He has an agent, and so the agent, made a deal with them. They wanted them, and so I'm delighted that there was the interest.
And
yes.
I presume they're going to do book 3 of Antares. They've got to.
No, they're going to do them all.
Yeah,
all of his books will be there. And
that's awesome.
For example, Antares Dawn, the first one, was released on the 17th of this month, February 17th, and Antares Passage on the 19th.
Oh, okay.
So, and then Procyon's Promise on the 20th. So,
okay.
they're all on their way out.
Fantastic.
Yeah. All the PDP-8 clones were sold, Leo.
Shoot. I just missed out.
Yeah. The ultimate nothing box, as you would. I can't argue, but they're just wonderful. And many people have been talking about something that's been in the news, but is really not that newsy. So I wanted to cover it just so that people would understand sort of where we stand. And that's over graphene. Graphene is amazing, but it's about 8 years ago graphene began to happen. What was newsy was that a video that was made of a bizarre way that a couple guys in the lab created graphene by like dripping it on a CD and putting it in their CD burner, and like using the they use the UV or the laser of
homemade graphene
to like create the graphene. And there's a beautifully produced video that sort of doesn't get into as much detail as I would like, but it won some awards for, I don't know, great graphene documentary or something.
It ain't the Academy Award, but it'll do.
But what's exciting and the intersection with us and me and the podcast is there's probably nothing more perfect for supercapacitors.
Oh.
Now, what graphene is, it is an amazing substance. It is pure carbon, so it is just carbon molecules interlinked in a hexagonal matrix, which is 1 atom thick.
Wow.
So imagine just a flat sheet of carbon atoms linked to each other, absolutely flat. It's called an atomic monolayer. But get a load of its properties. Okay, in terms of resistivity, that is, its resistance to electrical flow, a graphene sheet is 10 to the -6 ohms per centimeter. So
very low. Very, very low.
Unbelievably low resistance. In fact,
is it a superconductor in that case?
It's not, but it's close.
Yeah.
It's less resistance than silver, which is the lowest resistivity substance known at room temperature, and graphene is lower than that. It's also one of the strongest materials known. Get this. A square meter graphene hammock. Imagine that you made a hammock that was a square meter, so a little more than a yard by a yard. That would support a 4-kilogram cat, an 8.8 pound cat. Okay?
Okay.
But it would weigh only as much as one of the cat's whiskers.
Wow.
0.77 milligrams. That it is that thin and that low weight. But that's strong, so that a square meter of graphene sheeting could support an 8.8, almost a 9-pound cat, yet weigh about as much as a whisker. And it is 0.001% of the weight of paper. 0.001%.
Wow.
So just incredible. It is also transparent. It only absorbs 2.3% of the light passing through it.
Oh,
so
see, I was going to make a solar sail out of it, but it wouldn't be very good for that.
Well,
strong but invisible.
Because you need to be reflective in order
to capture it.
Yes, but think of all the instances where we want something conductive that's an electrode, like a screen or an LCD panel, where we need to pass electricity. Nothing does this better than graphene. So huge applications there. But more than anything else, ultracapacitors. What you need for an ultracapacitor is two electrically conductive surfaces very, very close. And it turns out you can create graphene oxide, which by being an oxide is an insulator. So you take a graphene sheet, a graphene oxide, and a graphene sheet, and they are incredibly close together. They're one molecule apart. And the graphene sheets are incredibly low resistance, so they can hold a large charge with a high breakdown between them. Initial studies of using graphene for ultracapacitors has shown that it has more energy density than current lithium metal. It wasn't lithium ion. It was lithium metal hydride, which is slightly lower energy density than lithium ion cells, but still this is existing. We're getting this in the lab today. So this isn't, bizarro future technology that isn't close. And everyone's talking about, cell phones that you can charge in a second, whose charge lasts a day. No more of this hours to recharge. Or cars where you drive them into a high current charging station, plug in for 60 seconds, and you are completely topped up. So
yes, that's what we need.
It is looking like graphene is the way we're going to get there. It is just an amazing substance. And apparently you just squirt it on a CD and spin it in your computer, and you're able to make some of it.
That blows me away. Not a usable amount of it.
That's just,
graphene
it's just
spot.
Yeah, I'm not impressed by that because it was fun in the lab,
right.
But obviously in commercial settings, they're not going to, get a room full of CD drives.
It means it's not a very, very difficult thing. You can do it at room temperature with simple devices. So that's good news.
Everybody is racing. The patent office is under siege with graphene-related patents.
Cool.
So there are a lot of things that have been done that no one can talk about yet because they're waiting to, they're having to go through some intellectual property protection process. But labs everywhere are going nuts. And it turns out that maybe it's going to affect both semiconductor production, because you need conductive surfaces on top of semiconductors. Right now they use what's called metallization layers, and graphene, if they can figure out how to tame it, could be way better than what they have now for semiconductor metallization layers. And there's been some notion that this may create a breakthrough in quantum computing as well. So, this is really cool stuff.
Graphene. Do you want me to continue?
Oh, well.
There's a pause here.
Exhausted. So
are you exhausted? I haven't seen you ever been exhausted. We are at the end of this list of things. We do have some questions. You're probably waiting for me to. I know what you're thinking. What's that box Leo's got there?
That was it exactly.
The one with the underwear on the tape. I know that's what you're thinking. It's my Manpack. This actually, you might like this, Steve. Manpacks is I first became aware of it with underwear by mail. Let me go to manpacks.com and I can show you. Actually, go to manpacks.com/twit manpacks.com/twit. Jeff Jarvis told me about this a couple of years ago, and I became a Manpacks subscriber. And I've been getting my Manpack in the mail now every 3 months. This is my latest Manpack. And, it has different stuff. You can order different stuff. But, for instance, I usually get socks. These are athletic socks. Sometimes I get dress socks. Underwear. And I found they have shampoo, they have condoms, all the kinds of deodorant, all the stuff men would get delivered on a schedule. And so I found the shampoo there that I really like and so forth. So here's the deal. If you go to manpacks.com/twit, just take a look. Go browse through all the stuff. These are the ex officio boxers that I like. They have just a touch of spandex to give you that extra support that men like so very much. I like the socks, too. And the grooming lounge. This is really cool stuff. This is a D.C. barbershop. And they have the little shaving kit is perfect for travel. Everything's under TSA limits, but it's got, shaving, kind of a cream. It's got a beard buster and after beard shaving. Anyway, take $10 off right now. If you subscribe, save $10 on your $30 order or more. If you want to buy a gift card for a man in your life, gals or guys, you get a $50 gift card for only $40. Manpacks, plural.com/twit. And now I can take my Manpack home. I've been leaving it here. This is the Beardmaster Shave Oil. This is good stuff. You put that on with the shaving cream, man, and you will, well, that's something else. I don't know what that is.
I do love the idea of the TSA compatible sizes of things.
Yeah. I recommend this shaving kit. It's a sampler of all of these beard destroyers, but the TSA size. So it comes in a little clear case that you could just put in your luggage. So that's what I do when I travel. I get one of these every time I travel at manpacks.com/twit. Highly recommended. Now, Steve, are you ready? See, I knew you wanted to know what this box was. That's
the question I was waiting for, Leo.
Are you ready for
Am I ready?
questions? Here we go. No, I'm not going to show that product, chat room. I'll leave that for you to discover on the Manpacks site. They actually have the condoms they sell, Sir Richard's. I like the name. Isn't that good? They donate, for every condom you buy, they can donate one to a poor condomless person in Africa or somewhere. I'm laughing, but it's actually a great program. Question 1. John Thompson, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Look, he spelled it exactly right. I guess that's because he lived there. He suggests that the canine isn't the only thing that's been quiet about the Quiet Canine Project. Steve, it's been months since we've heard anything definitive about your work on the Quiet Canine Project and your development of the troubleshooter devices. At one point, you said that hundreds of listeners had used the Quiet Canine feedback page to tell their stories and plead for a solution. I number among them, so perhaps you'll consider this as a short topic for a forthcoming Q&A. Where is the canine?
So, okay, I did get pulled off of it by the emergency that I had with my 13-year-old servers that began to get too long in the tooth, I guess. They started having weird problems that were of no discernible cause. I moved them to different hardware, same problem. I rebuilt the software, no improvement. I just think it was I think it was date related, and it began on January 1st, and it kept getting worse until toward the end of January. It became a real problem. So, as I've mentioned before, I did have brand new servers waiting to be deployed, and this was finally the impetus to make that happen. So, I have a few things I need to clean up to finish resolving. There were a bunch of incompatibilities that I feared. All the major ones were cured quickly, and I've still got some I need to clean up. Then I'm going to get back to just wrapping up that project. But here's what I think we've learned. And this is from all the experiments that people have done so far, even though there's still one thing left I really want to try, and that is to try tuned resonant cavity with a transducer, a piezo bender or a tweeter driver at the end, where we tune the cavity for resonance and see how that works. To do that, we need a high voltage variable frequency sine wave source, which is what I was working on when I got pulled off to fix the servers. But what I think we know now is that what many people want is not possible. It's that,
Oh, no.
that's the rip the bandage off reality. What people want is something that will silence a dog 3 houses away or 2 stories below them in an apartment building.
Yeah.
And we don't have that.
Yeah. Okay.
And we're not going to have that.
There's no treble sniper version of the troubleshooter.
Well, and I was wondering why so many people were asking for that. And I realized it's because several different aspects of the original portable dog killer story kind of fit together that way, but they weren't really meant to. When I caused the rabid German Shepherd attack canine to have its legs collapse out from under it and make an amazing sound, and then over the course of about a week and a half, trained it never to rush the fence.
Yeah.
It was by shooting it point blank in the face. I mean, I was at the fence. It was, leaping over the fence, and I shot it right in the muzzle and elicited the reaction that I had. So it was, and as much as anything, it was terror. I mean, this scared the dog, didn't hurt it, just scared the bejesus out of it. And so that was the key. Something it was absolutely not expecting, really, literally right in its face. And then the second adventure was with the seagulls, where we discovered that at a good distance away, we were able to alter the flight path.
Hey, somebody just bought a copy of Spin Right.
I actually have the phone next to me. Because it now works out of the BlackBerry as well as the
very nice, very nice.
in the living room. So wherever I am, I get a Yabba Dabba in my pocket. It's quite nice. Anyway, so there was the altering the flight path of the seagulls.
Yeah.
The problem is, sort of by combining those two effects, people have been hoping that they could stop a dog from barking at the same distance that the seagulls were, had their flight path altered.
Right.
And it's not the case. The dog might even bark more because, it's going to hear this and think, what's that? I think maybe I'll bark at it.
Right.
So unfortunately, we don't have an answer for that. Now, the good news is many of the people who did send feedback through the Quiet Canine feedback page have a need for what I would call tactical personal defense. And I think we have an answer there.
Oh, boy.
So, and it costs about $8. I mean, it's amazingly inexpensive. And that's just that little 7 or 8 component design that I have, and a $2 tweeter, with a couple, I think it's a 9-volt battery it runs on. And it's fantastic. So, and that would be if you're jogging and there's a vicious dog approaching you, that sort of thing. Personal tactical defense where you need to discourage. And it's surprising how many people have this problem. So that we have.
Like a mail carrier would need this.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, we have mail carrier listeners who have sent feedback saying, Steve, I need this. I'd be happy to test it out and tell you how it works.
Because right now they carry some mace or something to get the dogs that attack them.
And that's horrible. That's
that's really mean. Yeah.
Now, the other thing. So that works. The idea of a handheld, personal, short range, tactical defense that we have, because that's essentially the same thing that worked back when I was, 19, with the dog that was attacking me, and it's just stopped it cold. And I have a feeling this would be incredibly effective there. But the problem is, at a distance, there's just no way to project something really, really powerful that isn't going to fall off as it carries. I mean, the dog will hear it, no doubt about it, but it's not going to stop it.
Right.
Now, it
might anger it, and that wouldn't be good.
It very well could. We do have some dog owners who want to stop their own dog from barking. And there what I'm thinking of is a dog collar. So you get the advantage of proximity and the electronics module sitting down by the dog's larynx, so it's able to discriminate the dog's bark from alternative dog bark, other dogs barking or other sounds and so forth. And it would have a microcontroller in it and be smart, so that it's not going to misfire. But then there are some surface mount tweeters. Pyle makes some very inexpensive little surface mount tweeters, 2 of them. I guess people stick them on their dashboard in their cars and to get extra high-end response from the stereos. But if you stuck those on either side of a collar, then that would also definitely deter a dog from barking. The problem, of course, is it wouldn't deter a neighbor's dog from barking unless you could say, do you mind if I put this anti-barking dog collar on your dog? And if they said, yeah, we don't care, then that would work. But the idea that you're going to, shoot something 3 doors down and stop a barking dog, it's just, we don't have that. That's just not going to be possible. So that's where I am. I expect a few weeks from now, I will have all of the GRC debris wrapped up, and I'm going to then get back and wrap the project up, make the pages public, make the designs public. Probably still going to build a bunch to provide to our listeners who have an application that would fit this. So that's where we are.
Excellent. Question 2 from Matt, who has at a secret location. He offers his Java strategy. Steve, I thought I'd chime in on how my organization is handling Java. I think it might be helpful for others in the Security Now audience. I work at a research institute housed within a big university. We recommend that all of our users use Firefox or Chrome with Java plugins disabled for their primary browser. The university has some course services that require IE, Java, and in some cases both. So we leave Java enabled in Internet Explorer and ask users to use IE only to interact with those particular services. This way, our users can still get their jobs done and are better protected during their other regular activities. And I guess because they're using intranet sites, they're probably not anything to worry about using IE in that case. Thanks for Security Now, SpinRite, and everything else you do. That's probably a good solution if you can get people to do it.
That. Yeah. I mean, all Windows machines have IE in them, whether you want them or not,
right,
thanks to the weird architecture that Microsoft created in order to say that, back when the DOJ was, fighting them for antitrust, and they were trying to say, oh, no, we can't remove Internet Explorer. It's part of the operating system. It's like, what? So they made it part of the operating system for no good reason. And yes, Leo, I am a cynic, but since you're going to have IE anyway, and you'd really rather not surf the internet on IE, why not put Java there where, bundle all your problems in one place and then not use them at all?
Yeah, only use it on the intranet or something like that. Yeah.
The other thing, your comment about that, read my mind, because IE also has that whole notion of security zones.
You could say only on trusted sites.
Yes. So you could crank up the internet security all the way to high. And there's that new feature that they have, that enhanced security thing that prevents you from doing anything useful. You can't do anything if that's turned on. But turn it on. And because you don't want to do anything by mistake, for the internet, and then for intranet, where it's a block of IPs that are local, hey, then you're able to use Java NIE with no trouble. So I think, there's a way to tame this essentially by giving Java its own playground, but just make sure that it's removed from the browser that you normally choose to use.
Yeah, so you have a local intranet zone, and you could say, you can only do stuff there, right?
Yes. Yes.
and when it comes to the internet, turn it all the way up, and then you're all right.
I think that must be a corporate. I'm wondering,
it's definitely for this purpose exactly.
How many users get into their zone configuration,
right.
and what happens is using Active Directory and group policies, which are Microsoft technologies, the IT department is able to propagate settings out through the entire network and like remotely lock down and configure their browsers for their users. So it's good for that.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Question 3 from Ham in Ireland in Galway, EI8DRB. Steve and Leo, huge fan of the show. In fact, it was Security Now that introduced me to the world of podcasting in general. Well, we like to call them netcasts, but thanks for providing me with the company in the frequent traveling I do as part of my work. In recent episodes, Steve, you were talking about how parallelism has reduced the hardness of certain computational functions. You mentioned specifically iterative hashing functions and proceeded to describe how pipelining can reduce a multi-iteration hashing function to a series of discrete stages in a pipeline. However, did you forget to take into account that each iteration takes the previous iteration as an input? Unrolling this into a multi-stage pipeline would be infeasible, since stage n would require as an input the output of stage n plus 1, which in a pipeline would execute at the same time and thus would not have the result in time for stage n. Am I correct? Is there something fundamental I've missed? Thanks to you and all of you at Twit and Security Now. Regards in 7-3, Jerry. You talked about this recently, I think.
Yeah, I did. And I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't a common misunderstanding. Jerry is right, except that he got his math a little bit wrong.
And -1.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
He said since stage n would require as input the output of stage n plus 1, it's actually stage n plus 1 requires as input the output of stage n.
Right.
So it works exactly correctly. That is, and this is in general the way pipelining of all forms works, whether it's CPU instruction process pipelining or any kind of loop unrolling pipelining. It is the output of the previous stage feeds into the input of the next stage, as opposed to where Jerry got himself tangled up. He had the output of the succeeding stage being needed as for the input to the preceding stage, which is not the case. So it is the case that the pipelining works just beautifully, and it's such a cool concept that you're able to take something that that is iterative, and as they say, well, and in fact, in computer science terms, it's called unrolling the loop. One of the things when you are, in any kind of computer processing, you'll often have a loop that you're doing multiple times. If you absolutely have to have the highest performance possible, there is in programming a slight overhead to the loop itself. When you get to the bottom, you typically have to check something to see if you need to do it again, like you have a counter. So like say that you have to do something 5 times. So you decrement the counter, then you check to see if it went to 0, and if not, you jump back up to the top of the loop. So there's a decrement, a test, and a conditional jump, which you execute every time through the loop. But if you really care about performance, instead you do what's called unrolling the loop, where you actually have those set of instructions linearly laid out 5 times. Then you don't have to have a counter, you don't have to have a test, and you don't have to have a jump. The end of one set just falls right into the next set, which falls into the next set, and by the time it comes out, it's done. So you save the loop overhead, and that's again another form, a sort of a form of pipelining relative to iteration, where the results, the work from each stage is sort of by implication is available to the next stage.
Question 4 comes from Ben in Whittier, California, just down the road from Steve. He wonders about RAID controller failure. Steve, I was listening to Security Now 391, in which you talked about your monster server setup and all the redundancy in RAID 6 and all that. In my own, admittedly limited experience with servers, the first component to die is usually the RAID controller itself.
Oops.
Are you increasing your exposure to such a failure by going with such an enormous onboard RAID controller cache? How messed up will your disks be if the cache memory goes out while the server is running? Thanks for explaining your setup. Best regards, Ben.
So, first of all, that's a very good point.
That is a failure point. I don't know if they're solid state, aren't they? They're
solid state, and several things are going on. The thing that I am least comfortable with is that I have chemistry involved in the form of a battery. That is, it's a lithium-ion battery. It will keep the RAM contents in the RAID alive for 2 days. I really question whether I need it at all, because I'm at level 3 that has, when they were giving me their initial tour of the data center, oh my God, they have a warehouse of batteries. Just ranks of batteries. It's amazing. And then outside, they have what looks like huge RVs, which are industrial-sized generators and tanks of fuel. I mean, these guys are really committed to the power never failing. So I really doubt that I need battery backup at all, but, maybe I would pull the cable, the power cord myself, or maybe both of the redundant power supplies could fail at the same time. I mean, it's really unlikely, but you never know. So because I want the benefit of the so-called write-back caching, where nothing is written out to the SSDs until the space in the cache is needed, battery backup is really the only way to do that safely. What the system does is every month it cycles the battery. It's very nicely done. It suspends the use of write-back caching and switches to write-through caching. Then, while it's doing this, then it takes the battery offline, drains it, and recharges it, measuring battery parameters all the while. And then once it's back up to snuff, it returns to write-back caching. So, it's monitoring the battery. It sends email reports of anything it finds. But the worst could happen, and the RAID controller could fail, which is why I have an entire second machine sitting idle.
Wow.
I bought 2 of the entire setup. So I've got, this thing's got redundant power supplies. I already have 2 spare power supplies in addition to an entire second machine, identically configured, sitting idle. I did that 13 years ago and never needed. I actually have 3. One's running Unix, one was running Windows, and a third one was just off, ready in case of an emergency. My feeling has been, since I would hate to be down for days, which I would be taken down for days if like running around trying to find some other machine to run GRC. It's worth it to me just to invest up front. So I have 100% redundancy of a system that is already ridiculously redundant.
If there ever be such a thing. Question 5, Jim in San Diego wonders how something like a dumb PDF viewer could be so dangerous. I still, after our conversation last week, I look and everywhere says, you need Adobe Reader. You need Adobe Reader. No, you don't. Oh, no, you don't. Steve, I love your podcast. Listen as often as I can. As always, it seems Adobe has fixed yet more zero-day flaws in Adobe Reader last month. Actually this month. Perhaps I'm not getting something obvious. Why can't Adobe Reader be written so that even if it crashes, it would not have the ability to install malicious code? Is Adobe Reader's problem related to having access to kernel space? What's the deal? Jim in San Diego.
So, okay, and just to add to your comment about it being installed, I was setting up this new machine. I have it's a clone of the Intel Core i7 that I created when we were experimenting with that other video technology. It's a shuttle, nice little shuttle box.
Nice. Yeah, I like those.
And I added the chips and RAM and so forth. And when I was setting it up from scratch a couple days ago, and I ran the installer for all of its own drivers, the chipset driver, the NIC driver, the display driver, and so forth. And bloop, there appeared on the screen a little icon for Adobe 9, in that ruby red color of theirs. It's like, yeah, you just cannot get away from it. Of course, I uninstalled it and put Foxit Reader in instead. So the only way I can explain what's going on with Acrobat or Reader is that Adobe has such a stranglehold for reasons that Leo and I were just saying, Jim, that it doesn't matter to them. Sure, some portion of the security-aware world is upset and doesn't use Reader, uses something else. But
everything has problems, though, right? I mean, it's not like there's a perfect solution.
Well, yes.
Software is software. It's just that Reader is ubiquitous.
Yes.
In fact, I might even say that one of the reasons he keeps saving Java exploits is because it's a great vector, right? So people are looking at it.
Well, and also it's that they are both incredibly complicated.
Right.
Complexity is the demon of security. I mean,
Microsoft has been aggressive about patching flaws on Windows. So you look to a third party which is not updated so easily.
Well, and also, what's the economic model? That is, Microsoft was clearly going to suffer with competition from alternative operating system platforms. Once upon a time, there was BOS, and there was, Apple and Linux and so forth. It was clear that Microsoft was suffering from their horrible reputation about security, and so they did the trusted security platform or something, whatever that was that Gates did his keynote
trusted
on at
computing platform, TCP.
That's right.
Yeah.
But Reader is given away. Reader is a free download.
Right.
Java just we don't ever pay for it or ask for it. It's just there. So these are sort of weird lost leader things for these companies. I mean, Mark Thompson has been experimenting with the amount of money you can make if you bundle one of these, default install checkbox things.
Oh, yeah.
The Ask toolbar, or what was it? The other thing, it was Ask toolbar, and there was something else that Adobe was trying to install. Anyway, the point is
McAfee. There's always something.
McAfee. That's what it was. It's amazing.
Really?
How much
good bucks, huh?
Oh my goodness.
Mark Thompson's Analog X. He does shareware, and he's usually just gives it away.
Yeah. But he's like, hey, let's I don't know. Somehow it crossed his radar. He did some research, and it's like, oh my God, how much money you can make. And so, here's Adobe saying, we own PDFs. We invented it. It did go open source and open spec, so it's no longer a closed platform. It's getting installed everywhere, and we're making a bunch of money because we try to install crapware that people don't want at the same time. I mean, it's like, what's their motivation for fixing it? They really, they're going to respond, but it's not clear that it hurts them. And the same thing for Oracle and Java. And Java is installing crap too.
There are lots of third-party choices. People in the chat room are wondering if there's one you like or recommend.
I do like Foxit. It's what I've been using recently. I installed it on Sue's machine when I rebuilt her computer a couple weeks ago, and told her, okay, the icon changed now, but this is what it looks like, and it's
still use it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's had flaws too. It's not free from flaws, but
well, that's just it. I would imagine. One of the problems with Reader is it is ridiculously over complex.
Right.
Who needs JavaScript interpretation?
Yeah.
Talk about asking for trouble. If you're going to run a JavaScript interpreter in a PDF document, it's like, oh, just shoot yourself now. Because, we're trying to protect ourselves from JavaScript by locking down our browsers. And, notice that the browsers where their reputation and security matters, they fix it. Whatever it takes, they fix it. I don't see anything like that happening from Adobe and Oracle with Reader and Java. They just don't have the need.
Does it use Ring 0? Does it access the kernel? Is that
No.
No, I don't think it does.
No, the problem is that and that's the other part, is that we're still in an operating system where users want freedom. And look at how developers chafe at the restrictions that iOS puts on them. And even users, it's like, hey, why can't I do this? Why can't I have LastPass running on my Safari browser in iOS? It's like, nope, can't do that. So that's a restriction that annoys people, but it's where security comes from. Well, we don't have that really to speak of on our desktop platforms because they're open and people want to be able to run anything they want on their computer. If that's what you ask for, then unfortunately it means your applications are empowered to do whatever they want to on the system, which means that an aberrant application, malware in whatever shape it takes, is similarly empowered to do whatever it wants. Because the system is designed that way. We want it that way.
We asked for it, yeah.
Until it goes bad.
Right. More power. More power! Question 6, an anonymous listener. You suggest the name Bruce, so we'll use that.
Yeah, he said, I'm anonymous.
Call me Bruce. Posed a few good questions about Bluetooth keyboards. I was using a Bluetooth keyboard out at a restaurant the other day, and this question popped into my mind. Is what I'm typing encrypted? Could anybody just listen in on my Bluetooth keystrokes? And if my connection's encrypted, how secure is it? It seems as if there could be a problem with some sort of statistical attack on the data that's going up to my mobile device. If the attacker knows the data is all keystrokes, perhaps they could make an educated guess about the frequency of which keys were being depressed, extrapolate out from there. How do they avoid that problem if they do? Do they pad out the packets with lots of junk noise or something? I know I'm not the most well-versed in the operation of encryption, so maybe this is a stupid question, but I'm curious how you clever security folks address this potential problem with a piece of what is, for me, everyday technology. Thanks if you do answer my question. I love the show, and undersign the rest of the blah, blah, blah. Keep up the great work and enjoy your new server hardware, Steve. You sound like a kid in a candy store, and your enthusiasm is infectious. Bruce.
Okay, so
we talked about this
things.
some years ago.
Yes, we did, and I thought we hadn't for a long time.
Yeah, I'd love
so
an update.
Just dip a little into it. So let's talk about wireless keyboards in general first. The very early wireless keyboards had ridiculous, quote, encryption, unquote. And you'll remember that all they did was as you press keys, they sent out an 8-bit byte, which is the code for the key. But they said, oh, we don't want that to, be easily readable. So we're going to XOR it with a byte. Now, we showed the graphic image last week or the week before, I think it was last week, where you XOR'd an image with noise and you got noise. That's really good encryption. The problem was the keyboard XOR'd every byte with the same byte. That is, it never changed. So every time you pressed an E, you got the same code. It wasn't the code for E, but it was a fixed code. And F was exactly one larger than E because it's ASCII. And so anyone who analyzed that stream, it'd be almost a nice, really amateur crypto problem for people to have. It's like, here's someone typing something, and we've XOR'd all of the bytes with a single fixed byte. Anyway, obviously weak crypto. Anybody capturing that could easily, by doing a frequency analysis, look at which characters are typed, which characters are in relation to each other, because it's not like there's any kind of cipher where each character maps to a different byte. It's that each character is just XORed, which means the same. And remember, XOR is a certain set of their bits are inverted. Always the same ones, always the same way, every time. So that's the way it was. Now, but because that came to light, the manufacturers of the keyboard spent an extra 0.75 cents and increased the security of their keyboard so that it was good, so that it's now fancier security and we don't need to worry about it. Like when you buy a Microsoft wireless keyboard or Logitech wireless keyboard, they've got good wireless security. But none of that is Bluetooth. Bluetooth is a big set of standards, and the answer to the anonymous person who we're going to call Bruce's question is that only in the instant of pairing of the Bluetooth keyboard with whatever device was receiving the keystrokes. I have a Bluetooth keyboard with my iPad, so maybe, and I love that the Logitech. It's like it forms both a cover and a stand. Beautiful little keyboard for the iPad, and it's Bluetooth. Only during the brief event of pairing is there any danger at all from a man-in-the-middle attack, and even then it requires some sophistication. So what we said years ago when we covered in depth Bluetooth security, we've got a podcast on that if anyone wants to get this in more detail, is Bluetooth has a known limited range of 30 meters. 10 meters,
feet.
30 feet.
Yeah.
Right. Go out into the middle of an empty parking lot on a
You're safe.
so you can see all around you, and you know that you don't have anybody within 30 feet or 10 meters. Pair your devices, and then you're fine. And also turn off Discovery. Many people, it's shocking how many people leave their Bluetooth Discovery turned on. I'm pleased that my BlackBerry that will soon be retired for a BlackBerry 10, when you turn Discovery on, it's always for a fixed time.
Yeah.
It should turn itself
off.
Yeah. So the answer is Bluetooth keyboards are secure. Only if you were really concerned would you need to even worry about that pairing event. But presumably you do that at home or somewhere. And then from then on, they know each other. They when they are paired, what that means is that there is a secret handshake that they had that established a shared key, which is never exposed. Only derivatives of that key are ever used in subsequent communication, and you are as secure as we know how to make you today.
Question 7, Joe in Georgia. I was wondering when we'd get one of these, a universal plug-and-play question. Steve, I've enjoyed your discussions about UPnP and the external access issue. Quick question, can this be solved simply by creating a DMZ pointing to a non-existent IP? I seem to remember this was your advice when routers used to respond to ident queries, but I haven't heard anyone mention this workaround. Also, is there any risk creating a DMZ to a non-existent IP on my internal network? I don't even understand why this would work. Is there any risk of a malicious sender being able to do damage to other machines given that I've let them into the private side of the network? Really, create a fake DMZ, in effect.
Yeah, actually, that's been a solution for a number of router problems in the past.
Because unknown traffic will just get routed to there.
Exactly. People have had routers where they were not stealth. One of the things that I did when I rewrote Shields Up, as I talked about a few weeks ago, was I created that notion of true stealth, where I have a big funnel, and while I'm working with the user, sending them probing packets of different kinds, I'm casting a net for anything that comes back as a result of the queries that I am making. And I let them know, like, what's the nature of what bounced back for any reason. And So there were people, for example, whose routers did not allow them to turn off ping, and so that upset some people. Anyway, so an interesting solution which arose is to create a DMZ, which is it's a funky, I don't know why it's called, for demilitarized zone. I'm not sure how the term.
Because remember during Vietnam, there's like the place between your front line and the enemy's front line was the demilitarized zone. It was in between the two.
Actually, it's the Romulan neutral zone, Leo.
I'm sorry. Pardon me.
Yeah.
Why don't we call it the RMN?
I think we should.
RNZ.
Romulan neutral zone, then we would all know what we're talking about. So the idea is that anything not bound for a known computer behind the network gets sent to an IP that you establish. And you just set it to something impossible, something illegal, something not in your normal DHCP auto-assigned address range, and it just kind of creates a black hole, which is a great solution. So we have encountered people who are unable to turn off universal plug and play. The reason I had this question is in case any of our listeners have routers where they were unable to disable universal plug and play as detected by, for example, my Shields Up system. We're up to now 2,641 individual IPs have been found to be vulnerable, and the rate is really slowing down, which means that with the listeners within the GRC sphere, largely this podcast and friends of the podcast, have checked themselves and know one way or the other what their status is, but we're not seeing lots more. I mean, the number is apparently in the millions, but we don't have millions of people coming by. So anyway, yes, the DMZ, setting up a router DMZ, is a great solution for solving the universal plug and play problem, routing port 1900 to a non-existent machine. And then, GRC will show that there's no response from you.
Good.
Great idea.
Clever.
Yep.
John in Sweden suggests a good answer for the anonymous email question in 391, a couple episodes back. Hi, Steve and Leo. Insert gushing praise here. In episode 391, a listener asked about a free and anonymous email service. I think there's a great answer. Tormail.org, T-O-R, is a free and anonymous service that cannot give your information away because they don't know anything about you except for what you tell them. And since their servers are off somewhere in Onion Land, that's what Tor stands for, the Onion router, they are subpoena safe. Also, the problem Leo mentioned with exit nodes doesn't apply since it's a hidden service and you never exit Onion Land. Oh, that's interesting. What a good idea.
Yes. One of the things on my list of probably Propellerhead episodes is to describe the technology that Tor developed for offering services. Now, that's different than what Tor normally does. Tor is normally a client anonymizer, where client users use Tor to hide their identity for their traffic that exits out onto the public internet to prevent them from being backtraced back to home. Yeah. But the clever people who do Tor, I don't know if it was the EFF or whom, I'll find out and make the whole thing clearer in a podcast about it. They figured out a way to do the same thing for services so that you can access a service through the layers of onion routing, get to a server somewhere, but no one knows where it is. So it hides the service, and you are hidden from the service.
Oh, that's so good.
So it's mutual hiding. Very cool stuff. So for anyone who's interested in exploring anonymous email, and remember, Tor is not super efficient because you're bouncing through lots of servers. People complain about the throughput, but I think that's because they're trying to download movies and things.
Yeah, but email would be fine for.
Email probably works very well. Yeah. So Tormail, Tormail.org. Check it out. I will, and I will check it out, and we'll do an episode on how it's possible, what the technology is for offering hidden services, since that's very cool and not at all obvious how it would work.
Yeah. Matt Buford in Austin, Texas, properly corrects Steve about the invisibility of ISP's blocking port 1900. I'm a bit behind in watching security now. I just came across you suggesting ISPs should immediately block UDP port 1900. Was that for the UPnP problem?
Yep.
Whoops. Please don't suggest that packet filters be put in place for ports above 1024. These are commonly used as ephemeral ports, and you'll block legitimate traffic by doing this. Of course, that's how FTP works, right? It just assigns a random port.
Yep.
Yeah,
and that's how, like, client. Well, I'll let him finish, and then I'll
imagine my machine wants to send a UDP packet to someone out on the internet, DNS or whatever you want to imagine. It will pick up a random port at 1025 or higher, maybe 1900 as a source port. Many operating systems use 1025 to 5000. Sometimes people enable the entire range, which is, of course, 1025 to 65,535. That's if they need a high rate of outgoing connections, servers, for example. Anyway, I'm able to send my packet out with a source of 1900 and a destination of something else, say 53. The response then comes back to me with a source of 53 and a destination of 1900, and your filter blocks it.
Yep.
If my OS uses 1025 to 5000 as ephemeral ports and my ISP blocks packets to me on port 1900, then 1 out of every 3,975 requests of mine will fail, since I won't be able to get the response. I've found this problem on large networks more than once. People try to block worm ports or other things they think is bad on the internet backbone, and do so by just using ACLs to drop packets, access control lists, to drop packets destined for that high port. Doing this causes random connections in the other direction to fail. The number of failed connections is often low enough to not be very obvious to the average user, but having an internet connection that fails on even 1 out of 655,535 connections would be a bad idea. Is it any better because it's UDP, Steve?
No, he's completely right. His example is spot on. He used the example of DNS, which is a UDP query.
Right.
But often is the case, actually, that DNS is sourced from 53 and aimed at 53. It is often a 53 to 53 port to port, but doesn't have to be. But his point is well taken. I was aware of this weeks ago and just kept forgetting to mention it on the podcast. So when I saw Matt's posting, I thought, yep, let's make sure we acknowledge that really it is not safe to block, for exactly the reasons he says, anything over 1024. ISPs, as we have said, are blocking, for example, 25 to keep their own customers from being spam generators. They are blocking, then that's outgoing 25. They're also blocking incoming packets destined to 135, 136, and 137, which are the old Microsoft NetBIOS ports. They're also often blocking 445, which is the newer version of Microsoft's file and printer sharing service, to prevent those old problems. That's not a problem because those are so-called in the service port range below 1024. For example, when you go to Shields Up and you click on all service ports, that's the block from 0, and I actually do check for port 0 even though it's illegal, up to 1024. That's the block that I check because those are where services run. And so exactly as Matt says, when you first turn on your operating system and it starts sending out queries, if you look at NetStat, which monitors the history of connections, you'll see 1025, 1026, 1027, 1028. It just marches right up using sequentially upward numbering ports until it gets typically to 5,000. There's a registry setting you can change to change the upper limit, but that's normally enough. Then it wraps back around. The reason that it works that way is that disambiguates incoming traffic. You've got traffic coming back that may be TCP and it may be for your IP, but the question is for which query or like what is it coming back for? The only remaining way of separating many outstanding queries and replies is the port. So each successive query is on a succeeding numbered port. And exactly as Matt says, it's entirely foreseeable that you'd send something out on port 1900. So it would go out onto the internet. And when the query came back, it would be coming back to your port 1900, which is exactly the port that Universal Plug and Play accesses on your router. And if the ISP were blocking it, you just get no connection. Now, the operating system would retry, and it actually would use 1901. It would go to the next port and try it again. So, our systems are robust around that, but it's still uncool. And he's absolutely right. The idea of this being done out on the internet backbone just gives me shivers. That should never happen.
Uncool, man.
Yeah.
Uncool. Question 10, James S. in Utah wonders if his shields are only somewhat up. Thanks for the great Security Now podcast. I've listened to every episode at least once. I just replaced my router with an Apple Airport Express since the old Netgear is now in pieces in the trash. I wonder if he hit it.
I think he probably hit it with a hammer.
Once I set up the new router, I navigated the shields up and started pounding on the thing. Boom, boom, boom. The router responded to ping, fail, and actively rejected UPnP probes, but everything else was stealth. Turns out, Apple will not allow us to turn off ICMP response on the WAN side of their Airport Time capsule. Is that safe? Do I need to take my shiny new router back to the Apple Store? I didn't know this.
Yeah, this is a long-standing
other routers
complaint.
do that too, right? Because
it's varied. I think I'm responsible actually
right.
for the more standard, Netgear, Linksys, and so on routers disabling their ping response because of shields up, frankly, and the idea that and people just wanting to be stealth. So first of all,
stealth means that just if a guy sends you a request, there's just no answer. Not even no, I don't. I block that port. Just nothing.
Yes, and of course I named it stealth because of Star Trek and has related to the Romulan neutral zone and so forth.
Well, there you go.
Okay, I don't want to alarm anybody. So James, you're technically your shields are not up in as much as you can be seen. That is, but all that somebody knows is that at that IP address, they don't know it's you, but at that IP address, which your ISP has probably assigned you, and it drifts around every few months, there is something that is there, and when you ping it, it says yeah, and when you give it a UPnP probe, it says yeah, but it's rejecting the UPnP probe, so it says I'm here, but I'm not listening to these. Now, notice also that if I had probed 1899 rather than 1900, 1899 would also reject. So the point is that it's not just 1900 that is rejecting an incoming UDP. It's all of your ports are rejecting an incoming packet. And I'm just happening to check for port 1900. So if you wanted to be stealthful, you on an airport, you can do what we talked about a couple questions ago, which is set up a DMZ to a non-existent IP, to an IP in your network. So it's like, 192.168, but normally your router will assign maybe like from 1 to 100. So set the DMZ to, 111. Outside of the auto assignment range, so no machine will ever be assigned that IP, yet incoming traffic will go there. And when you do that, you will be fully stealth. So you can be stealth, but you don't have to. Remember that all this tells anybody is some unknown piece of equipment is at that IP address. The theoretical vulnerability is they could then try to dig deeper and do something to you, but at this point it seems unlikely.
Could you DMZ it?
Yes, that does work.
That's clever. I don't know if I've ever seen DMZ in an Apple router. I'm sure.
They must have it because
that's
the only way to run a server behind your network. In fact, I should mention that's why the DMZ was created, not because of the Romulans. but because if you wanted to serve something like your own little personal website at your IP, you inherently need unsolicited traffic. People you haven't invited by sending traffic to them, which normally means that solicited traffic is coming back in response. But clients of servers are unsolicited by definition. So their traffic coming in needs to get to your server. So this DMZ is set up so that unsolicited, unexpected traffic coming in from anywhere is routed to that machine's IP, where then it can decide what it wants to do with it. So I bet that the airport has to.
Oh, yeah, it does. In fact, Mac Wright's telling me, of course it does.
Yeah.
Last question, our bonus round. Here we go. Q11. Jonathan in Toronto brings us the software utility suggestion of the week. Hi, I just came up with a new little utility I'd like to share. You mentioned a few new utilities a long time ago, Cat Mouse among them. I love Cat Mouse. It's been great, aside from the middle mouse function that I would always have to disable on new installs. I also use Auto Hotkey, I like that one too, to change my caps lock into control and to reverse mouse scrolling since my drivers don't have that feature. The scroll reversal would stop working at random times, though. Well, since I now have a keyboard with hardware control of control... Hardware control of control. The control key.
Right.
Via dip switch setting. I no longer need Auto Hotkey or Cat Mouse. Welcome, Wiz Mouse. Wiz Mouse, W-I-Z Mouse, by Antibody Software, has the familiar scroll anything like Cat Mouse, but also has the option to reverse scrolling. Super simple, just a few options, just what I need. Hope you find it useful.
So I wanted to thank Jonathan for that. I've not looked at WizMouse, although I just did install Cat Mouse, both on the server at GRC and on my new Win 7 box I was building to set up a clone of IIS so that I can do development and work here. And listeners may remember what Cat Mouse does is it causes your mouse wheel to scroll whatever the pointer is over, even if it doesn't have focus. So focus is when you click on the window and it darkens it and jumps to the front and so forth, which is normally what the mouse wheel will scroll. Even if you wander the mouse off of that to something else and you scroll the wheel, that other thing still scrolls. Cat Mouse causes the mouse wheel to track with whatever the mouse cursor is floating over, which is really cool. I'm still using it. I'll check out WizMouse. I don't have a problem with the scroll wheel being backwards because I like it the way my grandfather used it instead of the way Apple has wrecked everything by thinking that I'm using a touchpad where I want, to like push it on my Mac the same way I do on my tablet, which is not the case. I find that the wheel is backwards on my Mac, so and whenever I do a major update, I have to go in and reverse the direction on the Mac. But they do allow that to be done, so that's cool. Anyway, WizMouse, so check it out.
Good. And that concludes all 11 questions on this episode. Nicely done, right exactly on time and everything. Steve Gibson's at grc.com. He didn't mention SpinRite. That's what I was waiting for. SpinRite.
Yeah, I knew we were going to have a super. Oh, that's what you're waiting for. I knew we were going to have a super long one. We had a lot of stuff at the top of the show, and I thought everybody knows about SpinRite.
Mention SpinRite. Get it.
Give it a rest.
World's best hard drive maintenance and recovery utility. You got to have SpinRite if you got a hard drive, and you can get it from Steve, grc.com. Make that yabba dabba doo sound off in his pocket when you buy a copy of SpinRite. Really great thing to have. But while you're there, he also does so many other free things. In fact, you might want to test that UP and Pleve flaw using Shields Up. So many other things you can do there. Just go to grc.com. He also has 16 kilobit versions of this show for the bandwidth impaired, and even transcripts if you like to read along while Steve talks. Thanks to Elaine. That's at G.
Elaine sent me a note when she transcribed last week's podcast. She said, it cracks me up so much hearing you describe where I apparently live. Because we were talking about she has bats
the mountains and there it is, right there. It's in the middle of nowhere is where she lives.
She did actually send me a photo, which I didn't focus on, but I showed it to Jenny, and it showed snow on a cactus.
Okay, there you go.
That
Says
sums
it all.
it up. That does.
Anyway, grc.com. Also, if you want to ask a question for our next feedback episode, 2 episodes hence, you could do that there. grc.com/feedback. I think that's everything. We do this show Wednesdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1900 UTC on twit.tv. Do watch live, because then I can look at the chat room and, add addenda from the chat room.
And we do have fun for the first 30 minutes, Leo. We ought to tell our live or our non-live listeners that we normally get finally underway at about 11:30, but, we have fun for the first half hour.
There's stuff going on. It's not like just dead air. You get to watch the studio set.
I'm a little conscious of the fact that I can say things that aren't going to be recorded for posterity. So, yeah.
Oh, well, maybe not recorded. We can't promise that. People do record things, So that's why you should tune in. But if you can't make it, we make on-demand audio and video versions available as well. Just like Steve, ours are a little higher quality at twit.tv/SN.
And there is a YouTube channel now, youtube.com/securitynow.
Yeah, isn't that great?
We'll bring you the videos.
Yeah. Yes. If you want to watch the video on YouTube, that's good too.
Okay,
Thanks,
my friend,
Steve.
we'll do a full episode of some cool topic, whatever is next on my list or happens in the meantime, next week. See you then.
See you then.
Security now.